Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Feig, and you're watching the whole podcast.
Got some nice guitars behind you there.
Thank you. Yeah, I got a Paul Reed Smith. I have a Rickenbacker and a cheap acoustic and a cheap bass just for when I need to play it.
Or smash it.
Oh, smash it. Yeah. You know what? Maybe at the end of the interview, I'll smash the acoustic. It's that cheap. All right. I think we're rolling here too. Okay. So let's do this. Welcome to The Hole. I am Rob Sprantz.
I'm Frank Godot Valley.
I'm Lori Levine.
And you definitely recognize the man in that bottom right square. Tim Robbins is with us. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So as someone who's always used art to get your message across, or any concerns that you may have, or just anything social issue wise you use your art for, you have taken this to a new level. You have joined us in the podcast realm with Bobbo Supreme, which, we've listened to the first 2 episodes and it's hysterical. And I definitely want to dive into how you did this because it really came off really good.
Thank you.
What made you want to get this started? Besides the obvious fury you're probably feeling like the rest of us, what made you want to dive into this and do this?
Well, I wrote it a year and a half ago. I was up in Boston, and I was had an apartment, and I could see the Boston comment from it, where Crispus Attucks was killed, where the American Revolution started. And I've been thinking for a long time about writing a companion piece for this film I did called Bob Roberts, which was about a right-wing successful businessman / entertainer / beauty pageant fan who was running for political office. So but I couldn't figure out how to put my current anxieties and problems with the current government into Bob Roberts' mouth. So I started thinking about this other guy called Ubu the King, who is a character I played when I was in my 20s, the first play that the Actors Gang ever did. And he was more like it. So Bobbo Supreme is really Ubu the King. He's this unrelenting id. He's unfiltered, unchecked maniac, man-child, narcissist, also a narcoleptic, probably has severe ADD because he can't hold his attention on anything for too long, and has turned the White House into this kind of circus. He's got a recording studio. He's got the set of his morning show in the Rose Garden. He's got the set of his game show called Losers Suck in the West Wing. He's got all these different distractions that are keeping him from dealing with what he really needs to be doing. And one of the things that he has to be on, this key to the plot, actually broke in the news yesterday.
I know. I know.
Part of the plot of Bobbo Supreme is that there is a white nationalist, white supremacist militia that has taken over the Michigan State House.
Yep.
And Bobbo refuses to do anything about it. Why did I decide Michigan?
No, I love that it was Michigan.
Crazy, right?
It
but
was.
I prognosticated that, I guess. But this is, indicative. Michigan is indicative of what's happening all over the country. We had already seen them after 2 weeks. It's funny, these kind of survivalist guys that can't last 2 weeks in isolation. I thought they had all these like beans and stuff and all these canned goods ready for the apocalypse, but couldn't make it 2 weeks and refused to wear a mask. Yeah. But aside from that, Bobbo came out of my twisted psyche. That was the whole exploration for me, was like, who is this guy? What are his traumas? What are his dreams? And Bobbo Supreme starts with a dream and ends with a dream. Mm-hmm. And we're not quite sure whether this is Bobbo's nightmare or ours.
We're pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all living it right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because the recent events thing, it's so true. When that's in my notes. Like it said, I wrote down recent events because not just that, but it's almost something that I know you have. It's 5 parts, right? So we've heard the first 2 so far, which was really unfair to let us hang after 2, but that's fine. we'll subscribe like everyone else, and you can do that as well. And we'll put all of those links up when this is done, so you can click on it and subscribe, and go to Patreon and subscribe, because it is so worth it. But so much is evolving. Are you like looking at the news every day and going, "Oh man, I want to write another one"? Like these next couple of months is going to give you enough to do at least 5 more years of this podcast.
Well, I hope to end the podcast with Trump's defeat, but it might be fun to do a Bobbo Supreme in Florida kind of series.
Or Trump's imprisonment.
In retirement.
In front of DeSantis.
The intention with this was always just these 5. But there are other scripts that I've written that will adapt really well to this format. Mm-hmm. I wanted to distinguish between radio drama and what we're trying to do here, which is kind of what we're calling aural, AURAL cinema, mm-hmm. which is the idea that, I don't know whether stories that take place in one room will work in this format. It needs to constantly be moving. It has to have elements of sound and music, and it has to constantly have this anarchic energy for me personally. Because I want the audience to be able to start imagining the faces and imagining the rooms that they're traveling through, and fill in the visuals with their imagination.
Yeah, and so you originally wrote this as a movie, right? So when you first wrote this was not going to be an audio experience. It was actually going to be a film, right?
Yes.
COVID hits.
And then COVID hit.
Right, exactly.
And I was talking to Adam McKay, and he was on board as a producer, and I was super excited. And then COVID hit. Yeah. And then I didn't want to give it up. I wanted to figure out a way to do it. And it's always, with every project I've ever done, there's always been some kind of mountain that is placed in front of you, some obstacle that seems insurmountable. And part of what I've learned over the years is that don't take it seriously. There is always a path. There's always a way. But this was a big mountain. Yeah. This is like, okay, so how do we do it? So what I tried to do is just start to adapt it to an oral entertainment. Then I sent it to friends of mine, that I'd worked with, that I knew would read it. And I didn't want to go through that whole process of trying to get actors to read stuff. So I called up friends and I said, I'm doing this in 2 weeks. Would you like to join the train? And all of them said yes. It was from Jack Black to Isla Fisher to Billy Joel Osment to Patton Oswalt. It was. I'm humbled by them because they brought all their incredible talent to it. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
super difficult to do though.
Well, yeah. You are lucky enough to have much better talented friends than we do, which definitely doesn't hurt. but
it also doesn't say much,
right? But at the same time, like, what adjustments then do you have to make? So you wrote it as a movie, so now, you talk about pulling something away. You're pulling the visual away. So now all of a sudden, all of these areas, because when you listen to it, the sound effects really do take you there, and it really does work very, very well, to the point where, as a podcaster, I'm like, this is just embarrassing that I'm a podcaster and this product is being done. Like, it's like, what a night and day. It's night and day.
We have to up our game.
I'm like, man, we got to get some scripts in here. We get some sound guys, but like, even to the point where there's a scene very early on, and again, I don't want to give away too much because I want people to check it out. But there's a scene early on where Bobbo wakes up and then he's in the bathroom, and you can hear the reverberation of the bathroom without ever mentioning that he's in the bathroom, and you can do that. So, how did you write that into the script, or did someone just help you with the sound design to that level? Do you have another friend that does sound design that we don't have?
I have he wasn't a friend, but his name is Brendan Solomon, and he was truly talented. But it was all in, as we were talking about it, I said, each room has to sound different. Each room has a different quality. All the footsteps from room to room have to sound different. All the different, originally we had him in a kind of Tesla wheelchair. where he wasn't walking at all. He was just zooming all around the White House. Now, that'll work in the film. It just didn't work in audio.
That would work good with the president's current lean. He kind of leans about, 15 degrees forward for some reason when he stands up. So that would work good.
But the biggest challenge, of course, was, how do we get 35 people how do we record them at the same time, and that was a challenge.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear, but there's a phone in the background. I am totally ignoring it.
That's fine. No problem.
We're doing the same.
But, we wanted to do it live, because it's a comedy. And so actors have to feed off each other. Yeah. And we did a Zoom rehearsal with everyone so they could see each other. But when we recorded it, we couldn't do that because it would diminish the signal. So we had an engineer that was plugging it all into one base where it was recorded. And we did our best to keep a solid, strong, fast, urgent pace to it. But then the trick was in the editing. It was because even with the actors that we had and the attention to detail and the attention to pace, there's still something in this format that doesn't allow for that kind of pace you need in a comedy. There's always a little bit delay. And so that was, we had to do in the editing. Almost every time there was a quick scene, we had to shorten the gap between when people talk. And not to mention when you want people to overlap, it had to be accomplished with the editing.
Yeah, but it was pulled off really, really well. And then on top of that, so I already feel bad about our level of production. And then you break into song as well on top of that. So just to twist the knife a little bit more.
The fact that you wrote those songs, especially not to like Rob said, not to give too much away but in episode 2, when you're pitching the song to the Black community, that's got to be one of my favorite things that I listen to the entire time. Yeah. And just the background singers that are singing back and just saying all the nasty stuff about Bobbo, how did you come up with that, man? It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. It was a song. There were 2 songs I wrote for this that I absolutely abhorred. I even though I wrote them, I found them deeply offensive. And Black People Love Me was one of them. Right. And so I when I was rewriting, I realized I can't listen to this song. I need to empower the backup singers to sing whatever the fuck they want. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I changed the lyrics so that what they're singing is not what Bobbo intends. Right. And he gets really pissed off and leaves the recording, so you never hear the complete song. It's also true in an episode upcoming, a song called "Wheat from the Chaff," which was a truly offensive song about immigration. And I in that song, I had to interrupt it with Bobbo gets really angry and tasers the clarinet player. So that we could, because he played a B flat, and B flats don't exist in his song.
Did your son help you with that? Your son's a musician, right?
My son is a brilliant musician named Miles Robbins. He's got a band called the Pow Pow Family Band. No, he didn't. But
he's like, I don't want my name on that.
but he is super talented. He is really talented. And my other son's a really talented filmmaker. Just made a film called VH which is on Hulu. That's insanely great.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a lot of talent in the family for sure. And then, so you wrote the songs. You wrote the actual music too. You're a musician too.
I wrote the music and lyrics of one of the songs called Manifest Destiny, and the other 4 songs, the music was written by my brother David, cool. Who I've been working with for a long, long time. He wrote the songs of Bob Roberts. He's done all the scores of the movies I've directed, and super talented. And he also helped with the soundscape and found different sound effects for us.
Very cool. So now what's the plan now? So after these 5, Are you planning to do more, I guess, seasons, you can call it? Or is a lot of this dependent on what's happening and your ability to go out and shoot and work on other projects? So was this born from COVID, or was it more something that you just adjusted to COVID and you have a plan to do more seasons of it, so to speak?
I love the idea of doing more. It really will depend on what, because this is all self-financed, whether we have a response to this, and then we can do more. I have about 4 or 5 ideas for things that I'd like to do. I also have a theater company in Los Angeles that are incredibly talented, and there's a couple projects I've been working in workshop with them on that would make good oral experiences as well. So here's the thing. Whenever there's like this is a significant cultural moment. We have to admit that. We are all adjusting in various ways to try to figure out how to do what we did before. And with live experience, that's very hard. This is something that I think I miss the most, is the idea of community, what you can assemble in a room, whether you're doing a concert or whether you're doing a piece of theater or whether you've made a movie that you want audiences to share with each other. This is missing. And so that's the big challenge. How do we create stories that can talk to the audiences in such a immediate way that reflects their lives right now, and so that they can feel part of a community, even though they are not allowed to be in a room and sharing it with other people. I think that's the challenge that's facing all of us. I think when we come out of this, I don't believe that we will be, as audience members, I don't think we'll be looking for the same kind of entertainment that we had before this happened. I think it's a moment like that moment in the early 70s when Easy Rider was made. At the time, the movie studios were doing benign musicals like Thoroughly Modern Millie, and nobody was going to the theaters, and the movie studios were blaming it on television. Then Dennis Hopper comes along and makes this movie, and it's a huge hit. And then all of a sudden, the movie studios are like, hey, we need more hippie filmmakers. And they're giving the keys to the car to Scorsese and Akula and Coppola and Robert Altman and Hal Ashby, and all these amazing films started happening. I think we potentially are in a moment like that. And I have a lot of excitement about it. And I have a lot of excitement about this new form that we're working in. I think we can make some really cool things with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. So you mentioned Robert Altman, which of course gives me a great segue into one of my favorite movies, The Player, where it's just, he was such a great filmmaker in so many different ways. And I remember I saw that in the theater, and I instantly wanted to see everything else he's ever done, because that was my first experience. The Player was my first Robert Altman experience. And, there's that whole initial shot, that whole like long beginning that it goes through. And it was like something unlike I've ever seen before, the way that he would tell stories and stuff. So, I mean, I have to imagine that, before the time comes that you do Dead Man Walking, that you have to have learned a lot from him and use a lot of that, of his techniques in there.
As a matter of fact, when I was doing The Player, I knew that I was about to direct my first film, Bob Roberts. So it was like film school for me. And I got to tell you, it significantly shifted my life. He was amazing. I had admired him from when I was in high school. The first film I saw was Nashville. Oh, yeah. And that blew my mind. At the time, I wasn't a big movie person, but then I saw that film and I thought, wow, you can make that in a movie? And so when I got to meet him, I was really nervous. And I drove to his place, and I was talking to my agent. I said, well, where are the sides? What do I have to read? What do I have to do? And he goes, well, no, there's no sides. He just wants to have lunch with you. And so I'm sitting there having lunch with Robert Altman, my hero, and he immediately puts me at ease, and we had a great conversation, and got to the end of the meeting, and he says, I want to do this with you. And I said, "Wow, thank you. I'm honored." And he goes, "Yeah, cool. You want to smoke a joint?"
Nice.
And so I stayed
It's
for
like any good relationship.
Yeah. How do you not?
So the first day I arrive at pre-production, he has me into his office and he says, "Listen, we got to make a deal. We're gonna change this script. I'm not in love with it, and I want you to help me rewrite it." And he immediately, and then he said, "Listen, at some point, the producer, someone's going to come in and they're going to start fucking with me, or they're going to start fucking with you. So the deal I want to make with you is if they start fucking with you, I walk off the film. If they start fucking with me, you walk off the film. Deal?"
Wow. He knew.
And I said, "You bet." And the rest was history. And it was an incredible learning experience for me because I saw how a man with integrity and vision has to protect that, has to be really specific and strong to protect that vision, but also at the same time was lovely to work with, was great with actors, would have every night would have dailies and food and wine and beer, and it was like being in a family. It was the best experience I've ever had on a film.
Now, who
did the producer fuck with, you or him?
Right.
Neither.
Oh.
Neither. We never had to walk off. We just were like, they were frustrated, but but we were making good stuff, and so they couldn't deny the film that we were putting up at Daily. So,
yeah. And so at that time, I guess Bull Durham was the one that, while you were in other projects and other films, Bull Durham was the one where your name became a pretty household name. People knew that movie, loved that movie, especially in the baseball community, but people in general just got to know who you were in that movie. I mean, would you consider that the first role that really put you ahead of everything else? Like, where you go up a notch in your career?
Definitely. That was the one where I no longer had to audition after I started getting scripts. But I have to say, a movie before that, Five Corners, was the one that saved my career, because it came out around the same time that Howard the Duck did. So it was like, it was such a great thing to be able to show people to counteract the effects of a really shitty movie. But Bull Durham was really the one that kind of put me into this kind of position where I could start determining what I wanted to do. And that was a great place to be.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Howard the Duck, but I'm curious how many other people have gone from being nominated for a Razzie to winning an Academy Award. I don't know how many other people that's a climb right there.
I'm honored. I'm honored that I am one of those people.
So when you act, let's talk about that a little bit, because people like us will never know what that experience is like to get nominated for an Oscar, to win one. You did for Mystic River, which another fantastic movie, fantastic performance. But everyone always says the same cliche. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy they just thought of me. But you kind of really want to win, don't you? Like, it's got.
Well, and also it's a machine. Like the PR behind it and everything you have to be part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is, and I had been aware of that. Luckily, around the same time that all that award season was happening on Mystic River, I was working on a play called Embedded that was going to open at the Public Theater in February. So I was in rehearsal for that. So I would rehearse during the week, and I'd fly out to LA on the weekends for various awards. And so I wasn't part of that dance that you're talking about. It is kind of demeaning, I think, everybody campaigning for Oscars. There's an awful lot of free food and free booze and kind of a attempted seduction of votes, and it's a little bizarre. I gotta say. I mean, listen, Hollywood's a bizarre place. I mean, it's something I understood very early on, that there are traps that are in front of you when you become famous. It's like a compromise and surrounding yourself with people that are just telling you what you want to hear. It's so dangerous because I think it leads to mediocrity. I think we see that all the time. I think we see brilliance early in careers, and then something happens. They start playing the same role again and again, or they less and less material, more and more less and less quality material, more and more quality pocketbook money. And I think there's a direct connection between that. It's hard to continue if you care about, the kinds of movies you want to do, and don't care that much about the money that you're being offered. And that's tough at times in your life, So there were times when I had not worked for a while where I got offers to do stuff that was, in my opinion, horrible, that I had to turn down, but lots of money, And at the end of the day, the way I justified it was, that'll kill me. That will, and I'd rather live, than compromise.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're really trying to build yourself a body of work. You're not really just, while that's not the goal, you have to look back now and look at, everything that you've done. And now you're building this great body of work. And, we haven't even gotten to the best film, in my opinion, of all of them, which is Shawshank Redemption, where it's to this day probably and you probably hear this all the time, it's the only movie that every time it's on, when it comes on TV, no matter what area you join the movie, you're in till the end. It's really that's
my afternoon's gone.
Yeah, exactly. You can't turn it off, and then the commercial comes on, you get aggravated. But it's just such an incredible film. When you're making that movie, do you have any sense that it's going to be? I know you hope everyone's going to be great, but when did you realize that was a really special movie?
It was the best script I've ever read. We had an amazing cinematographer, Roger Deakins, and Morgan Freeman's amazing. So it had every potential, but when it first came out, it was not a success. It was, it got nominated for a lot of awards, but it didn't do well in the box office. And I believe the reason it became so well known and so revered was because it started playing more and more on television. And a little secret, the reason that happened is because Ted Turner sold it to himself at the lowest rate possible, because he was the head of Warner Brothers, and he sold it to himself, his own television station, at a rate that was way below a movie that will get 7 Academy Award nominations.
So that's why it's on there all the time.
So it started going into a rotation that was, so it was seen, God, I wish there's some movies I've done that I wish had that kind of exposure. There's a beautiful movie I did called Secret Life of Words that I think is a classic movie, and Code 46 and Catch a Fire. These are all movies that are out there. And that's, when you're talking about your life and your breadth of work, I'm as proud of those movies as I am of Shawshank. And I'm blessed that that Shawshank has been received the way it has been. I get stopped all the time. Well, at least when I used to go out on the street and walk around and go places, I would get stopped all the time. And usually what people say is more than just, I like that movie. It's that movie really meant something to me, that it changed something in me. And that's a very powerful thing to be a part of.
Well, and it changed you too, Tim, because then you started going into prisons, right? And doing theater.
Yes. Yes. I started, it was first that and then Dead Man Walking, which I directed, that I became more aware of the some of the details about what was going on inside prisons. I remember asking one of the prison guards on the set of Shawshank Redemption about I asked him, well, if you were, this is like a, salt of the earth, conservative Republican prison guard, central, Mansfield, Ohio. And I asked him, what would you do to change the system if you could? And he said, legalize drugs. And I was taken aback by that. And I said, well, that doesn't seem like there'll be something to come out of your mouth. And he said, well, here's the thing. We have a lot of these nonviolent offenders coming in. Possession of marijuana, for example, they're coming in, they're going to serve 1 to 2 years. Our waiting list for GED programs and job training is 1.5 years. So basically what we're doing is we're putting these nonviolent criminals into an environment with violent criminals. So it becomes crime school for the nonviolent criminals.
Yeah.
He says, if you're not going to legalize drugs, at least have 2 separate facilities. Because what we're seeing with our own eyes is the criminalization of people that aren't criminals. And that had a huge effect on me. And so about 14 years ago, one of my actresses at the Actors Gang asked me if she could begin a program inside prisons. And I gave her some funding to do it and started participating in the development of it. And 14 years later, we're in 13 prisons, 15 yards. We have a recidivism rate for the people that we've worked with of 10% compared to 60% statewide.
That's great.
And we've got an 85% reduction in prison violations for people that have been through our program. We came to understand after a couple of years of doing it that it really did work. For some reason, the way that we work at the Actors Gang, the combination of a demand for honesty in emotional states and a physical approach to the work, somehow that combination really worked. We introduced them to characters from the Commedia dell'arte, so it's not psychotherapy. They were expressing emotions that are through characters. Through the old miser or the servant or the young lover or the doctor. Those characters allow them a filter to express what are sometimes emotions they have not expressed for years. In prison, the predominant emotion is anger. It is your survival mask, as they say to us. We ask them to paint on masks. And then inevitably they come to understand that they've been wearing a mask for years on the prison yard, because there is more to them than just that angry mask. There is sadness, and there is happiness, and there is fear in them. And so when we're doing an improv and there's 2 characters up on stage and one is angry and the other actor chooses to be angry back, the facilitator will say, listen, well, I need to try a different emotion in response to anger. And they express fear and everyone laughs, or they laugh at the anger, or they become sad, empathetic towards that angry person. And guess what happens? They're out in real life on the yard and they're presented with anger, and they've made the choice inside in that room. They could do it inside in that room to not go to anger, and they do it. And it actually winds up allowing them to rediscover their own humanity, which is deeply inspiring, has inspired all of the teachers that have gone in. And we're now, of course, facing this big challenge with COVID, and we've been adapting it to the programs to a writing program. And every month we send in packets with return envelopes, and we ask them to keep doing the work, even though we can't meet with them personally.
Mm-hmm. See, it's great stuff, and I never understood, and this kind of will round us back to Bobbo in a weird way, but it's for someone, you've always been outspoken, and you've always been an activist in so many different ways, and you've used your celebrity for a lot of good. But yet sometimes you still see people, for some reason, hate on that, and I just can't understand why. And so my question to you is, in addition to what you're probably going to get on Twitter and such for Bobbo, I mean, does that make you feel like you're doing the right thing when maybe 30% of the population, who I mean, gets annoyed when you're, speak out about climate change or you speak out about the prison system and all of these things?
It's usually, that hate is usually driven by a collective. I don't even want to mention the organization, but there is a publication that kind of mines anything any person with influence says and then kind of distorts it and lies about it and puts it out. And then you're getting all these tweets of hate. And one thing I understood very early on was that kind of opposition or hatred is an abstraction. It's not real. When you can't look in someone else's eyes and say something, there's an awful lot you will say with the courage that you have alone in your room staring at a screen that you can't say in person. The other thing I'll say about that is that it's a political agenda that they're following, and that agenda is to intimidate and shut up anyone with influence when it opposes the policies that they support. Mm-hmm. It is a time-honored tradition to intimidate people that have voices. And why is that? Why is that? Well, because art is powerful. Art is a significant power. And when an artist illuminates a truth, when an artist exposes a hypocrisy, we are invited into a whole other realm of understanding that you don't get from politicians. And they understand that. That's why in an authoritarian regime, the first people that these cowards go after are writers and artists and actors and intellectuals and musicians, because they know that those people possess a power to bring them down.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that you always
hear
it
was McCarthyism, right?
That McCarthyism was part of it. I mean, look, you go look at Hitler destroyed art, claimed to be a big fan of art, and was a failed art student himself. If we could go back in time and you could be the college administrator and accept him into art school as a student, we might have avoided a lot of carnage. But this is their game. This is where they live. This is they understand the power of the voice of the artist, and they want to intimidate you so that other artists don't do that. And I've always had the attitude of fuck you to that. I have a right to say what my opinion is in this country. That is what defines freedom. If you don't have the courage to speak when it's most important, then why the hell do you have freedom of speech? But I have always found that whenever I do that, those people are out there ready to try to get you to shut up. And it is pretty intimidating, when you get thousands of tweets that are saying essentially the same thing. And, it's like a robot patrol, or, they've been fed their epithets from their masters. And it's sad, really, but that's the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, and it's I thought of that question when I was reading, because Bobbo Supreme tweets as well.
Yeah,
he puts out his own tweets, and one of his tweets, the irony is just soaked in, where Bobbo attacked the Hollywood liberal media, the Hollywood liberal elite, in one of the tweets, and do you write Bobbo's tweets? I mean,
no, I don't.
It's just
I don't know. No, that's one of the people that are working on the film. I should look at them more.
It's great. Like on the other, we had to switch over to Zoom, but on the other service, I had some of the Bobbo tweets up, which were, I think my favorite was, and they're all in capital letters. And my favorite one just said "Eat the poor" with a bunch of exclamation points on it. So it was.
It should be a song title. For
I know
Supreme.
It should. Maybe season 2.
It actually is. It is. There was one scene. No, it's actually "Kill the Poor." That's the song title.
Oh, that's great. Well,
teachers are liars. That's another song title.
Teachers are liars. It's we laugh because we don't have a choice, but it's right on, man. It really is. Did you write that before they even talked about the fact that they wanted to change the way things were taught? Like all of a sudden you can't teach how to hate.
When are the book burning is going to start? Well, there won't have to be because no one has any books anymore. But
Kindle burning,
yeah. But
Kindle burnings, yes.
Tim, I read a great quote that you gave to the New York Times where you obviously like knew Donald Trump from living here in New York and everything. And you said that when he was a real estate developer, all he wanted to do was be around famous people. And then he becomes the most powerful man in the world. And no famous people want to be near him.
I know.
Great.
I actually asked him to, he tried to crash a party I was throwing. It was a small, intimate gathering at a club, and we had a room set aside. It was someone's birthday. And I go out to use the restroom, and there he is with a couple of his goons. And he said, Donald would like to come into the party. I'm like, no, I don't like his buildings. He was making all these ugly buildings in New York. Gross, classless. And plus, I grew up in New York City. I know a thug when I see one. I know a gangster when I see one. And I didn't want him in the party. Yeah. And as I'm saying that, I look over here. Donald's here, and flash. And I've just taken a photo with him. He had this cameraman that would go around with him to take photos of himself with famous people. And so I hope that photo got overexposed and doesn't exist anywhere, but never seen it.
I tried looking for it and I couldn't find it.
I don't think it exists. Maybe he doesn't want to be photographed next to me. Now.
Yeah, why would he want to be with a Hollywood
which I'm very proud of.
Badge of honor.
That's how you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just listen. This is a nightmare, and he's in a tailspin right now, and I think we all should be diligent and have. We should be ready. We should be strong and resolute, and we should be voting. Mm-hmm. And it is the time to vote against fascism. And we will worry about how to get things done after the election. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm encouraging everyone to vote for Biden.
Absolutely, as we have been every single week since, because this nightmare needs to end. But you're right about the tailspin, because I think I tweeted the other day, like, now it looks like when you cut a chicken's head off and it just flaps until it's done, like it just seems like he's throwing everything he can at the wall.
Apparently he's doing a balcony speech tomorrow, which is very Mussolini.
Yeah, I know. Well,
very Hitler. So, we'll see how that goes.
I know.
It's, the other thing is, how much time have we had to dedicate to this abhorrence? That will be the big liberation, won't it? Just to not have to worry about that anymore. He has occupied too much space in all of our heads. And that's another reason I wanted to do Bobbo Supreme, because, we need to laugh. In laughter, there is power. In laughter, there is solidarity. And it's important that we do that. And not just laughing at, some imitation of him, but laughing at an exploration of what the deep, dark corners of his psyche are. That was the intention of Bobbo Supreme.
Yeah. Well, it's great, and I know you have limited time, so I want to tell everyone again, we'll put the links up as well. You'll be able to click on it, but go anywhere that you can get podcasts to check it out. But you can also be a patron on Patreon, and you can go to patreon.com/Tim Robbins Presents. And again, we'll put the links in so you can just click on it and become a patron, because I believe you get the episodes early, right? As part of that?
Well, there's 2 out this week. There's 2 more that drop next week, and then the following week is the finale.
Awesome. Very much looking forward to it. Before we go, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick ID, I would really appreciate it. If you can just give us this is Tim Robbins and you're watching the whole podcast, I would appreciate it.
Hi, this is Tim Robbins and you're watching the whole podcast.
That's it. Nice and easy. Tim, thank you so
You know,
much.
I usually don't do those.
Oh, really? Well, thank you. I feel honored.
You guys have been lovely. It's great to see faces too. That's the other thing is like, you know, I now understand what it's like to be a puppy that is left alone for the day while the master is out working.
Right.
Because you see faces and you're like,
Well, if you ever want to, I was gonna say, if you ever want a safe place just to talk to us without the Zoom, just let us know.
Okay. All right.
We'll be here for you. But once again,
hey, Franco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say what was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. It's all right.
You got a Met hat on this. You're okay.
Yeah, and
All right, there we go.
Or is that a Giant hat?
No, this is a Mets hat.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I'm a big Ranger fan too, by the way.
We're both Rangers fans.
Yeah, I've seen you at Rangers
Big Knicks
games.
fans.
Tim.
Yeah.
What's that?
I've seen you at some Rangers games.
I love our Rangers. I love hockey. I still play. I'm you know, a little slower than I used to be, but it's a beautiful sport.
One time I was in the park near Washington Square Park, and there were some people playing roller hockey, and you, I think, were there, and everybody said, that's Tim Robbins playing hockey. And I was too far away to be able to tell, but it did look like you. Was that you?
Yeah, it's at Houston and 6th Avenue.
Right.
We had a regular game there for many years. I don't know if they're still playing now. I don't know if they're allowed to play, but great group of guys. And it's a great game.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say now I have a good Tim Robbins story, but this one's a better one. So, but Tim, thank you so much again. Once again, everybody, check out Bobbo Supreme. Thank you for listening to The Whole. I am Rob Sprans.
I'm Franco Del Valle.
I'm Lori.
Thanks again. Bye bye, Tim. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, man.